every time I look at the calendar, I'm always like, we are one more week closer to watching the Batman.
Oh my god.
That's
We're gonna have to change the title of this podcast to just be solely about the Batman movie.
Countdown to the Batman.
Yeah, talking Batman.
Yep, like I said, just count down to the Batman. That is, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Well, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go see it an abundance of times.
Correct.
But after it comes out, it's like, what am I gonna base my ear around? Like, there's other movies that I'm excited about, which if you watched or listened to last week's episode, you would know that. But this one is by far top tier, upper echelon. And
well, you got some good news today then, because apparently they're sticking true as of right now. They're sticking true to their release date.
Yeah.
And there was a wave of panic.
There was some uncertainty
over the masses.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Correct.
Every day I have a bit of anxiety that March 4th is gonna roll around.
And they're gonna go,
and I'm not going to be able. Yeah, and they're gonna be like, nope, see you in July. And I'm gonna be like,
God forbid they go.
That'd be truly devastating.
We'll see you next year. Rob probably wouldn't do this podcast anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know what I would talk about.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would talk about. So before we get into this week's topic du jour, what do you say we do a little talkin' pop news kernels? Kelly,
news kernels.
Let's start with you. What would you like to talk about this week? What's in the news? What has you excited?
I'm gonna say like less of a news tidbit and more of what I've been watching. I just, along with many millions of people, just watched the Dexter New Blood finale. So I know you two goofs haven't watched that show yet, and shame on you. So sorry guys, I'm gonna kind of spoil it here for you. You're just gonna have to catch up. But so like I would say the vast majority of viewers, I'm one of those Dexter fans who thought like seasons 1 through 4 were like phenomenal.
Correct.
It sort of wavered, had its ups and downs after that. And then
Julia Stiles, Colin Hanks.
Yeah.
Colin Hanks.
Yeah, they had its ups and downs. And then, that finale was rough. So, I went into watching this whole season, Dexter New Blood, with a little bit of trepidation. Yeah. But honestly, I gotta say, like, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was like a return to form a little bit. You had, I want to say, Clancy Brown playing like the big bad of the season. He does a phenomenal job. The young kid, his name's escaping me at the moment, but the young kid who plays Harrison, because Harrison is back, guys, in his more teenage adult form. Okay. He's great.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, he's great. And so when I'm reading about the finale and how people feel about it, there's some people who are feeling that, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, and kind of are feeling a little negative about it. And then other people are kind of saying, it just felt a little rushed or a little abrupt. Okay. I'm more in that camp. I actually really liked how the show ended. I'm sorry, guys. Here it is. Spoiler alert. Dexter dies at the end.
I knew that was going to happen. Without even watching it, I knew they were teeing that up.
Yeah, he dies at the end at the hands of his own son. And they do like it was almost perfect in my eyes. Like I think basically like the last episode, I think should have at least been 2 episodes, because we need a little bit more of that cat and mouse, because basically Dexter gets caught. It's very, and so, I would say, like, for our listeners, if they're on the fence about going back and watching it, I think it's definitely worth a watch. But it would have benefited. I think it was 9 episodes in total, probably wouldn't have benefited from being 10, maybe even like 11 or 12, just to like really, really satisfy the viewers new and old.
Right.
The last thing I'll say on this is I was so excited they brought back Angel Batista into the show in like a cameo role. And in the last episode,
Really?
in the last episode, he's like, there's a new police figure in the new town that he's living in. And so she phones Angel and Angel's like, I'm coming down. And you never see that showdown between Angel and Dexter. So that also left me wanting more. So it has its ups and downs. It's like, I think the best comparison I have is like Breaking Bad. Like, I think Breaking Bad did such a better job of like closing it out, the inevitability of a character whose actions are flawed and will eventually catch up with them.
That's interesting, because even without watching it, that's kind of how I was taking in, like, obviously I was seeing like the little episode teasers and like the initial trailer they had put out for the new season or whatever you want to call it. But the thing is, it had that feel. It felt like it was kind of going in that direction, that it was kind of like, okay, we whiffed on the finale, the initial finale. We're going to go back because the show deserved it. So many good performances throughout it. John Lithgow put him back on the map as far as I'm concerned. Like genuinely just like upward trajectory ever since he did that season, whichever one that was. 3, I don't remember. 4. Yep. Okay. And so, I mean, I'm glad to hear that. I am actually really happy to hear that the show, maybe while not ending perfectly and not satisfying everything, it's a much better ending than the first time around. So give it a watch. That's what's been keeping me busy in the last week. Good. Even though I just spoiled it for you. That's right. You know what? There was a good chance I wasn't going to.
As you both know this, and you both think I'm a weirdo for it, I don't mind.
You love a good spoiler.
I find I get more excited when I know what's going to happen. And if I know that it sucks, I can brace myself for it.
Or just skip it altogether.
Can't.
I'll go next. My news kernel for this week centers around Batman. A set photo was taken from the upcoming Batgirl HBO Max movie that seems to show like a mural that's been painted on a wall of Batman and Robin. And it looks like Michael Keaton's Batman. Granted, it's got the white eyes, but it's got the yellow oval. We all know the role that Michael Keaton is playing in this show as sort of like her mentor. Yeah. But this is sort of confirming that Robin existed in the Keatonverse. And I know that someone might look and go, well, yeah, Chris O'Donnell, but I don't think.
No.
Remember when they did Superman Returns and they basically were like, Superman 3 and 4 never happened. Yeah. I feel like they're going to do the same thing with Keaton, where it's like, Kilmer and Clooney just never happened.
Or it's a different universe and they're just going to roll with that. Which is
they see, but the look of this Robin too is very like traditional. It's like, it's got like so this leads me to believe, are we going to get like a Dick Grayson, Nightwing, like Tim Drake character in this show? I think we are.
I think so too.
We are.
Yeah, I think so too.
It was long rumored that Nightwing and Batgirl were both in development at the same time years ago.
Right.
Nightwing didn't really go anywhere. And I think now we might end up seeing Dick Grayson or, like I said, Tim Drake or maybe even a Jason Todd in the Batgirl show. And it got me really, I'm not going to say I haven't been excited for the show. I have. Anything to do in the Batman universe, especially with Michael Keaton coming back, I'm stoked about. Like,
so excited.
Full stop. But like seeing this and being like, man, like they're like, this is a whole new thing. Also, didn't know this. Did you guys know that J.K. Simmons is Gordon in this show?
What?
Yes.
Oh.
No.
Yes.
That's news to me.
So I'm guessing the Flash is going to end up amalgamating universes, I guess, or
Yeah.
Keaton will come across into Affleck's universe or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, J.K. Simmons is playing Gordon in the Batgirl show.
Man, that's
Because
interesting.
she's Barbara Gordon, right?
Well, if anything, that without fully telling us kind of confirms what we had suspected and maybe what we can come to assume with Flashpoint coming up is that maybe Batfleck is going to get the old and then Flash 100%. Has to go and then Flash has to go find somebody to fill that role.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that pretty much all that but confirms it. I think is like if you're telling me J.K. Simmons is going to be Gordon and Keaton's Batman is within that universe, that's the only thing that makes sense, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
I think
a really interesting tidbit.
Yeah, it's
Colonel.
Really
that's a kernel right there.
That's a kernel. It's really interesting, like how like I would love to be a fly on the wall in like a Warner Brothers strategy meeting because they're like, okay, we got Matt Reeves over here. He's doing his own thing. Nobody go near that. Then we've got Keaton. He's here. He's signed on. Let's build an entire universe around him. Oh, and then we've also got like Jason Momoa still, and he's going to go over like, it's so fascinating to me. Like there's part of me that thinks it's a stroke of genius that it's like, yeah, just take the best of everything and do it and stop trying to be Marvel. But then there's also part of me that's like, this is messy. Like
this is very cluttered.
I can't compute. And that's me who's got I'm no slouch when it comes to understanding the inner workings of the comic book superhero universe. So I'm really interested. I'm not, I'll never write anything off before I see it unless it's from the Sony Spider-Man universe. But like I don't know how I feel.
I just find it fascinating that No Way Home is doing something similar, but in a way to expand their cinematic universe. And Warner Brothers is using it as a vehicle to just try to fix all the stuff that they screwed up.
And to make a Batman specific, like to basically.
Yeah. And it's fine. Listen, Warner Brothers, hey, like, tip my cap to you. Because like, I thought they were going to have to write the whole thing off for a while. And then it's no fault of anybody other than it's just, you know what, you tried something and it didn't work for a lot of people. Well, just go.
There's a certain director who I'd place the blame on.
I do too. I'm not like overly defending here, but by the same token, I'm also just like, okay, he had an idea, he went for it. Nobody goes out to make a bad movie. So he had an idea, it didn't work. And unfortunately, the trickle-down effect kind of made the whole thing messy.
He had an idea. The idea was to fundamentally not understand the characters he was making a movie for. He had an idea. It was to take the most iconic superhero of all time and completely ruin him to the point that he can't even get a movie yet. We're about to have Ant-Man 3 come out and Thor 4. But okay, anyways, whatever. Listen, just to put
anyways.
My world doesn't exist anymore.
Oh God.
Like don't even put a bow on this. Okay. If at the end of this movie, what happens is everyone kind of goes off in their own direction, I'm going to consider that a success. If at the end of this movie, it's like, here's a new version of the Justice League, I'm going to go, no, don't do it. Don't do it.
God, no.
Don't do it. Like, please don't do it.
Yeah.
Anyways, Brad, news kernel.
Well, unfortunately, my news kernel is a little bit upsetting. Like most of us know, Bob Saget, unfortunately and sadly passed away.
Right in the feels, that one, man.
Yeah.
Which was, it would be a lie to say that I wasn't like obviously very taken aback by that news. This is just somebody who was very much a part of, if you were a 90s baby, an 80s baby, even up until now, like he just seemed to kind of be one of those actors or comedians or, all the different hats that he wore. It was in so many different things of us growing up. And you know, it was it's been kind of a hard pill to swallow, this one. It just seemed like he just, and especially once you see the outpouring of love from especially anybody that he worked with, whether it be another comedian or people he worked with on different shows. And but at the same time, I think everybody has just been kind of honoring him with, you know, sharing memories of, you know, different things that he was a part of, or, you know, and just kind of sharing those memories and saying like, what was the thing? And so I feel like it would be nice if the Talkin' Pop crew just kind of said, like, the first thing that kind of just instantly pops in your mind when it comes to Bob Saget, as far as like a production that he was involved in, and it's fine it's the obvious choices.
Well, I mean, obviously Danny Tanner, I know Kelly and I, growing up in the same household, have seen every episode of Full House 100 times over.
Yeah.
But you know what I always like, I got a kick out of when it came to Bob Saget. He became famous for playing the most wholesome TV character of all time, but was actually a really dirty comedian.
Yes.
And the best part is we didn't know until we got older. And it was like, so it was kind of like we grew up with Bob Saget, even though he was always kind of that style of comedy. It was like America's Dad and then America's Funniest Home Videos, where you kind of saw like a little bit more of like an edge, not really, but like a little bit more just as far as like what he was doing. But then as like you kind of got older, all of a sudden he was like in these different movies that you were kind of like, whoa, this is kind of a different role for Bob Saget. And then you slowly started to find out about like, oh no, his comedy was dirty. And then as you got older, you'd go back and you'd be like, holy, like this comedy
cameos,
raunchy.
Cameos and like entourage and stuff. Yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about. Kelly, what's your memory?
I mean, Full House is the obvious choice. Like, and just thinking about, it's funny, sort of the juxtaposition as we're talking about sort of like the dirty humor that he had, and that character was about like being like a neat freak as well, and like him like vacuuming the vacuum. Or like cleaning his own, like cleaning the cleaning gloves and things like that. And then also how he was like always like giving, like he was like, he just loved a hug and things like that. Like those are, I mean, like those are the things that I remember about that character. And then this is the thing that I've been seeing a lot on the internet, which I'm like, God, it's so true. Talking about America's Funniest Home Videos, they're like, you better not undersell the fact that Bob Saget was hosting YouTube on TV.
If you didn't say it, I was going to say it.
Yeah. Where it's like, that's where people got their cat video fix. That's where people got their like, you know, people falling down. Over.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, and this is the thing. And that's what I was going to say. As much as Full House was, I feel like, on everybody's kind of like initial thought, like I have to say America's Funniest Home Videos. Like I remember my sister and I specifically just being in hysterics watching America's Funniest Home Videos, and just like thing after thing after thing of just being like, and seeing how like it just kind of developed over the years into being like, you know, other people hosted the show, but then YouTube became a thing. And it was kind of like, oh, because at least on America's Funniest Home Videos, you could win a prize. Now people just put it up for free. And so Bob was the real hero there. So anyways, rest in peace, Bob Saget. I think he meant a lot to a lot of people in our age range in particular. And just really, sad to see him.
Big loss.
See him go.
R.I.P. Bob. So there's no like easy way to transition out of that. So I'm just going to awkwardly transition out of it. This week's topic is one that I've been really excited to talk to you guys about. And it's a bit of a different one than what we've done traditionally on the show. I want to talk about the movie industry as a whole, specifically going and seeing films in a theater. And I think there's a lot of topical examples about sort of the landscape. You know, I think a lot of people zero in on the pandemic specifically when it comes to this. And they think like, because at home, straight to home rental didn't really start until the pandemic.
Yeah.
But I want to go deeper. I want to go further back, because I think what you're seeing now is not necessarily a result of the pandemic. It's a result. I've dubbed it the Netflix effect. So, for example, there's some topical examples right now that I would just want to throw out just to kind of get the juices flowing. So the obvious one that comes to mind is Spider-Man No Way Home. In a pandemic, makes $1 billion in just under 2 weeks.
Yeah,
correct.
You have other films like Steven Spielberg's West Side Story bombing at the box office.
But also receiving a ton of critical acclaim. Let me just put that out there.
Exactly.
So that you're making my point here.
Yeah.
So we've had directors come out recently, Scorsese and Ridley Scott, to name a few, who have taken shots at Marvel movies and basically said that, you know, they're ruining the movie industry, these types of movies. But I don't think that's the case. I think
I agree.
What I think has happened is I think there's a Netflix effect. So if you want to look at the reverse side of that, the opposite side of that argument, Don't Look Up has over 58.2 million hours viewed in its first week.
Yeah.
Far more people watch that at home on Netflix than would have gone to the theater to see it.
Yep.
And what I think you're seeing now is Marvel, how would you help me? I've been trying to think of like what to call these, like blockbusters, because the movies that move the needle are Marvel, they're Star Wars, they're Bond, they're like those types of movies that you gotta see it ASAP in the theater, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like a West Side Story, to your point, it got critical acclaim. No one, like, it didn't bomb because people were like, oh, that looks terrible. It bombed because people are like, that's going to be on Netflix eventually. I'll just watch it then.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm gonna wait. Yeah.
And I think like it's really interesting to me as to why this is happening. And Marvel, like No Way Home, you got to see it. Have you seen it? What do you mean you haven't seen it? You got to go see it. Like, are you kidding me? You're left out. You get the FOMO if you haven't gone and seen No Way Home. Everyone's gone to see it. Everyone knows what the twists are. Go. What are you doing? How have you not gone to see it yet? Does anyone say that about West Side Story?
No. Well, you kind of just took like the words out of my mouth there. So like, I think one of the things that stands out to me, there's many things, but one of them is not only the Netflix effect, but the FOMO effect. When you have, and now we're going to get into a talk about like finances and the economy, but when you have people who have a certain budget allocated to being able to take their families to the movies, where tickets are $15 a pop, then your meal with your popcorn and your drink is another $15 conservatively.
Yeah.
And then there's also just like the whole experience of probably, loading a 3-year-old, 4-year-old into the car, all that. So take all of that into consideration. What movie are you going to go see? The West Side Story where you know how it ends, or the one where you gotta go and figure it out? You gotta go because your friend's going to tell you, and because people are going to be talking about it at work, and because we're going to be talking about it here. And if you don't go see it this weekend, well, it's going to be spoiled on YouTube. And so it's people have like an infant, a finite amount of money that they're going to allocate to going to the movies. And when you're looking at what you're going to choose to go to, you don't want to miss out on the big one. So that's where you put your budget.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think it's like, to your point, we're going to talk money and finance here, but if we're going to stick into that vein, like, let's, talk about that has been an ongoing problem within movie theater industry for a long time, because only recently, not super recently, but somewhat recently, did I start to learn about what it actually costs a movie theater to buy the film to show in their theater, and then in turn how they're actually making the money back. And in almost every case, like, like everybody always says, like, oh my God, the snacks are so expensive. Like, I'm just going to see, they're expensive because they're trying to pay for the fact that you're now in the theater. They're not making any money off of those movies. And in a lot of cases, that's the greed of the studios and the producer, everybody that's behind that. And the issue becomes, you know, everybody wants to point their finger and be like, you know, this is the bad guy, meaning like superhero films, or this is the bad guy. And like the theaters are charging too much. The theaters are charging a lot because they can't afford to buy the films to put on the screen for people to go see. And so in turn, having people complain about movies like Spider-Man No Way Home or other superhero movies in general and saying like they're ruining filmmaking. Buddy, the only reason you're, and this is with all due respect, these are people that I've respected my entire life, complaining about these right now. You're wrong. You're wrong, because if anything, and we talked about this last week with Avatar, like it or lump it, that movie gave the movie theater industry CPR then. Yeah. And the superhero movies now are giving it CPR again. And they're what's keeping the industry alive alongside some of the other bigger ones like, you know, Bond and whatever. But nobody wants to look at the new kid and go, he's keeping us alive at this point. I want to be the one to say like, my movie's bringing people and putting butts in the seats. And it doesn't mean your movies are bad, to your point, Rob. It just means people, especially with remakes. And again, I'm sorry, but like West Side Story, Kelly, you just said this too. It's like, we already know. Yeah. It's been made. As much as I'm sure it's good, and I'm definitely going to watch it, I already know what's going to happen. And I do really want to watch it. But if you're asking me, am I going to spend $20 to go watch that in the theater, or watch a movie that's coming out within the same range, that's going to be something I don't know for sure what's going to happen in this, and it's exciting, and I'm already bought in because of previous movies, I'm going to go watch that. It's the same reason why people tune in to next seasons when new seasons of shows come out. Yeah. They're already hooked. So now you just got to keep pumping them out.
I'm intrigued to know if Don't Look Up represents sort of a philosophical shift. Don't Look Up is very, very interesting to me.
It does.
A massive movie with massive stars that did massive numbers because of the convenience of it being available on Netflix.
How do you think that movie would have done in the theater?
That's exactly my point, Kelly. That's exactly my point. Mm-hmm. It would not have done, not nearly as many people would have watched it opening weekend as they did on Netflix. Correct. So at what point do we start to see a philosophical shift? You know, I heard Quentin Tarantino on a podcast once, he basically said that, and I don't necessarily agree with this viewpoint either, but I do think there's some merit to it when he said, like, I don't subscribe to any streaming service, because he acknowledges like that's what's killing. Because Kelly, you referenced earlier, you said, you know, bringing the little one, but West Side Story is like a date night movie. The movie that we talked about. And that's
the funny thing is I think it's like, I think we've seen the death of the date night too.
Yeah, exactly. Because and why is that? We haven't seen the death of it because we haven't seen the death of these movies because they're bad movies. We've seen the death of them because, you're right, people are on budgets, which is a huge factor, but I also think it's the convenience. Well, it's two things. It's budgets about going to the movie, but it's also a budget in the sense that like there's a new streaming service every week. Yeah. So people are signing up for these, and your library of movies that are available to you just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you look at each other and you are a family and you are on a budget and you say, look at all these movies on Disney Plus. Like if I really want to go watch Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum in The Lost City, that'll be available to me on one of these. Is that what it's called? The Lost City?
I think so.
Like that will be available to me on one of these streaming services within the next 6 months to a year. So why am I going to go to the theater to see this when I have all these movies at home that I also probably haven't seen? And I'm just going to watch that, and it'll eventually.
Well, exactly.
And that's where I think the landscape has shifted. And you can talk about other factors like Disney doing premier access for the at-home rental and that sort of thing. And that's a whole other discussion that like that works for some people. And it doesn't for others.
It's not enticing to me. Yeah.
No, but it's just, if you don't, I think the movie industry, and I think Marvel specifically, has really made it since 2008, has made it so now going to the movies is sort of like going to I don't know if this is an appropriate comparison, going to like a concert. It's like an event.
Yeah.
Like,
you have to have been there. You don't know unless you were there.
Everybody's going. Yep. Everybody's checking it out. Everybody's watching the videos of Andrew Garfield pulling his Spider-Man mask off and the people going bananas in the theater. Like, it's so at what point is there a philosophical shift? Like, at what point do you just look at it and go, like, Don't Look Up as the example. This movie was far more successful and seen by far more people with the direct to Netflix release than it was in the theater. And do you start I think you're going to start seeing that more and more and more, and getting a huge name actor like Leo DiCaprio in a movie like that and seeing the numbers that it did is only going to continue to push it in the direction.
I think it's partially because like the movie star as a concept has also changed quite dramatically. Like, I remember us being kids, Rob, and like there was, mom and dad got a babysitter because the new Jim Carrey movie came out, Liar Liar.
Yeah.
So they didn't
liar.
That's what it was. I have a very vivid memory of this night. It's
great. I love that.
But it's like they were going to see that movie for Jim Carrey and didn't really care about what the plot was, right? So I think that's also like a shift that we've seen is now it's about, to what you said, Rob, like you got to go for the event. You got to be a part of that next saga. You got to be a part, you got to keep up with it. It's almost like, and Brad, you just said this, like the television model is moving over to film a little bit where it's like, you can't miss it. And the actor as a concept, I'm not, as much as I love Robert Downey Jr. I love Chris Evans. I'm not going to the movie to see that actor anymore. But I like those actors enough that if there's a movie on Netflix that I'm already paying for through my subscription fee, I'm more likely to click that because I know those actors. So it's like their position of power almost in terms of like garnering attendance at the movies has changed, and it's kind of diminished over time. Leo is arguably the biggest actor alive today. Like he is what people, when you think of a movie star, you probably think of Leo. But I didn't go to the theater, even going back a couple of years now. I didn't go to the theater to see Wolf of Wall Street. I didn't go to the theater. I can't even remember the name of it now. The one that he won the Oscar for. I didn't go to see that one either. So it's like,
The Revenant.
The Revenant. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's like, I love Leo. And because he's on my TV right here, I'm going to put him on, but I'm not going to pay money for it. And it's a mix of all those things of like, where am I going to allocate my time? Where am I going to allocate my dollars? And what do I care enough about? And what do the people around me care enough about? Because you're ultimately a part of a community, a tribe, a group of people who you want to talk to all these things about. And it's like, and then that ultimately kind of like by process of elimination, I end up at the movie that's gonna, keep me in the pop culture zeitgeist. Well, and I'll catch the other one later.
Yeah. That's, I feel like that's an interesting point as well, because I mean, I think the big thing right now is that it's like, you're also, I feel like these are, three people talking right now who actually do like going to the movie theater and like seeing certain, and that's the thing. But by the same token, and this is something like I hold going to the movie theater like extremely close in my heart, just because it was something that I grew up with. My parents, would take me, and it was always like a big thing. And like you even just kind of mentioned, Kelly, like it was kind of like your mom and dad got like, tickets to go see Liar Liar and whatever. And it was kind of like, we're going to the movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like
they went with another couple. It was a double date to go to the movies. Like that doesn't happen anymore.
Well, and this is to me, if we're gonna talk like philosophical changes or whatever, I think there needs to be a philosophical change in how movie theaters are operating, period. And because I personally would be devastated if, movie theaters in general just stopped being a thing. Because as much as we're all saying like, Marvel movies are moving the needle and making people come to the theater, but that's not that. There's only so many movies they can make that are going to put butts in the seats and like for theaters to stay open. especially in places like New York or whatever, where real estate is highly expensive and there's a lot of movie theaters on highly expensive land. And if you can't afford to, pay those rents and everything else, like the theaters are going to disappear. And so my question becomes, what do you do? What do you do to make it more of a go back? Because I don't think it always has to just be like, the biggest movies. It needs to become more of a, why would I spend my money? Whether I really am excited, like you said, Kelly, like they didn't even know what the movie was about, potentially, and like didn't particularly care. Well, the movie theater needs to become something that is beyond just going and seeing a specific movie that you're jacked about. It needs to become more of a, I'm going to the movie theater because that's a great place to go, an affordable place to go to take my family or take a date or take my friends, and we'll all hang out there. What do you do? Well, and I don't know the exact answer.
I think
it's out there.
This is like this. To me, it's not a one size fits all, and I hate using that term. It's so corporate, but like you have to you see the counter argument to that, Brad, and where I get stuck, because in my mind I start thinking about like, oh, well, you could just take a movie like West Side Story and put it in a smaller theater or like whatever, right? Like, but you can't beat if you're a studio, don't you want the most people seeing this movie? Like, don't you want more people are going to watch it through the streaming service? Like, that's just a fact. More people will choose, unless you've unlocked the Marvel formula, which is the FOMO formula.
Correct.
More people will choose to just watch it in their home. And I guarantee you there's even people out there who will wait for a Marvel movie to show up on Disney Plus. They're sure. They're the minority, but I guarantee you there's even people like that. Sure. So it's just, to me, I see this going in a direction where the theater industry, I don't think the theater industry is ever going away. Like that's not happening. But I do see it kind of shrinking a little bit. And what I mean by that is, like, take a theater, take a big sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Like commercial theater, whether that's like Cineplex here or AMC in the US or something, where you go in there and there's like 12 different cinemas, theater rooms. I could see that shrinking down to 5 or 6, and like you only, but bigger rooms to hold more people in a non-COVID world to all go in there and watch Spider-Man No Way Home and that sort of thing, and all these other sort of movies.
Yeah.
If you want to have a theater experience, I don't know.
It's so hard.
It's honestly an impossible question, because first of all, you've already turned half the theaters like entryway into like a carnival. Like there's the games and all that. So it's like, they've made their attempt at being like, oh, why don't you bring your date and
alcohol. You can drink in every theater now.
You can drink in the theater. Now there's VIP seating. Now there's restaurants where you can go and have a bite before you head right into the theater. Like, it's not for a lack of trying that they're trying to say, come back to the theater. And then, I'm sitting here rolling around going, oh, what would be a good idea? Maybe a Marvel post-credit scene is only available in the theater. And then I'm going, but then some asshole's going to just record it and put it on the internet.
Yeah.
Like it really, truly makes it impossible. I think for me, the main selling point of one, I like going to the movies. For those in Canada, I subscribe to CineClub, which is like I get a movie a month. Like that's how frequently in an ideal non-COVID world I'd like to be going to the theater. Mm-hmm. But I really like to choose a movie that is
worth your time to go.
Not even worth my time, but also worthy of the theater experience. I am going to go and see a Chris Nolan movie in theaters because he's shot it to be experienced that way.
Exactly.
I talked a little bit of shit about Avatar last week, but when I go see that movie, like you've got to go see that movie in the theater. Like you have to, like that's the way it's meant to be consumed.
That's what I mean. But like, I think the blockbuster in the theater is very much alive and well. Like when you see all the clips of the people in the theater going berserk when Captain America picks up Thor's hammer, like the Top Gun, perfect example. Push that movie back forever, because the first time you see that, you have to see it in IMAX. Like you can't watch that movie at home. Like you have to go and experience it in the theater. So the blockbuster is very much alive and well. Just to throw out a question, I've asked you guys this once already. I want to bring it back and just sort of like hone in on this. Do we think Don't Look Up and the numbers that it did represents a philosophical shift? And when I think of like a West Side Story, bombs, great reviews. Guess what? Once it shows up on Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever, I bet you it'll do good numbers too, and tons of people will watch it.
Well, exactly. And listen, because
do we see? Sorry. Let me just get this. Just table this. Do we think that this is where it's going in the future? Do we see more movies with big stars coming to these streaming services, and that's more of the route that some of these studios will take, because your movie is going to, like, I don't know what the pay scale is like with some of these streaming services. Well, I guess we know what it is. Own your own streaming service. Like we see it with Disney, we see it with Warner Brothers and HBO Max. Is it put these movies on your service that aren't blockbusters? So like, I keep coming back to it because it's a timely, relevant example. What studio did West Side Story?
Oof.
Well, I think it was under Spielberg's Amblin studio, but I couldn't tell you who actually released it off the top.
So if that studio owns a streaming service, put it on there directly, sell it to Netflix. I don't know what you do.
Here's the thing that I was going to say, because I think you're right. I think you're right when it comes to a philosophical change as far as what people are going to see. And I mean, listen, I think everything also just got, as much as we don't want to blame it for this, it's like, I mean, COVID clearly put this whole topic, in hyperdrive because of the fact that, people now couldn't go out. And now it's kind of made them go like, oh, I can watch this at home. It's not that bad.
But along comes Spidey swinging in.
Correct.
In the middle of a pandemic and making $1 billion in less than 2 weeks.
I will say that movie also hit, luckily timing was everything with that. And it kind of hit the sweet spot where it was like, hey, we're all getting boosted and nothing's going on. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, Omicron takes over. But anyways, that aside, I do think that it's the perfect example to look at a movie like Don't Look Up. I enjoyed it. And I haven't seen West Side Story yet. And I can already tell you I'm going to enjoy it. I just from a cinematic standpoint, how it's been shot and everything else, it's very Spielberg. I fucking love Spielberg. So I'm like, it's going to be great. But so that's the perfect example. Don't Look Up, while a lot of people liked it, critically, if that even matters to a lot of people, critically, it didn't do well. And,
it was okay.
But the views went through the roof. And a movie like West Side Story got great reviews and nobody went to go see it. So you now have this situation where you're kind of looking at it like, it would be great to see that on the screen, on the big screen, but am I willing to pay for that? Blah, 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 like we just said. An interesting point that I'm going to bring up as far as like, I don't know how you could maybe integrate this into more common events and things like that. But the thing that I always take to heart, especially around, the latter part of a year is, that's when the Oscar movies start to come out. And usually when the Oscar movies start to come out, there's film festivals like TIFF, for instance, Toronto International Film Festival. You have, there's multiple, I'm not going to name them all. Tribeca Film Festival, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is it's like those movies do really well there. And and part of it is because like, okay, so for instance, my girl's mom, she gets the subscription for the TIFF events.
Yep.
And she goes to all of the films. She loves it. It's cool to jump from movie to movie to movie to movie and see them all in like one shot. And so my thing, or over the course of a couple of days, it's fun. You're there. People are chatting. There's stakes involved as far as
hype.
Like, exactly.
It's a happening.
Exactly. And so my point is while I don't fully know how you could coordinate this, I do think you're starting to see a shift, especially what's been going on with Sony and Disney working together more closely. Perhaps we're going to start to see more studios working together as far as like, okay, we have these kinds of movies that we think are maybe not going to be, the big grab to get butts and seats at the theater. And we also have these kinds of movies. They're great movies. We want them on the big screen. We want people to see them in that way. Maybe we start all kind of releasing these at the same time and doing more like circuit style film festivals and having people kind of go place to place to place and seeing them and experiencing them in that way where everybody's kind of seeing them at the same time. That's the only thing that kind of pops in my head.
I do think you have something there. And
Yeah.
I think if you were to release a movie at a film festival first and let it build some hype, then you might get more people going to see it in their regular theater, because what these movies are missing, and I think what the point we're trying to get to here is, if you're not a blockbuster, if you're not a Marvel blockbuster, you don't have any hype. Like people don't, there's no compelling reason to take time out of my week to go to the theater to watch this film. Correct. So if you could get it in the film festival, if you could build up some hype, if you could do that, then people might go, oh, I heard that's really good. We've talked about it on this show before numerous times. The thing that always amazes me about the movie industry, like it'll never not just, I just think it's so cool. I work in sort of like a marketing advertising sort of world, and the amount of people who spend millions of dollars thinking about thinking about ways to market and get in front of people and be top of mind and raise awareness and all that kind of stuff. But the movie industry, man, it's word of mouth. Like it really is. Like it always has been. Like Marvel is the perfect example of that. It's what I said when I started this conversation. How have you not seen it yet? You got to see it. Oh my God, it's so good. Wait till you see what happens. I can't believe it. Where do you think they're going after this? Who knows? I can't believe you haven't seen it. Go see it. Like it's just so. If you can find a way to sort of spark these non-blockbuster films like that, then again, let's come back to it. Don't Look Up. Don't Look Up had that. For the first weekend after it came out, everyone I talked to, have you watched Don't Look Up? Have you watched it? What'd you think about it? Because everyone's at home with a Netflix subscription.
Yeah, like, so I have 2 points here. So one is like, if you think about when you used to go into Blockbuster back in the day, like you'd sort of roam the aisles, and then you'd see somebody you liked. Oh, that looks good. I like Charlize Theron. Why don't we give that a spin? Netflix has done that to scale. Like,
yes,
every person is walking the aisles of Blockbuster at all times during the day, every day.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me because, like, we're talking about a movie like Don't Look Up, while, there was some critical debate about it. It's still like what we would think of as like a movie, a well-made movie with like actor, like, like what you would think of when you think of a movie that would typically debut in theaters. But then you also go on your Netflix top 10 and you see some hot garbage there that people are consuming. So I think that like really plays into the convenience factor, right? Like people are more, despite the fact that we have phones and we have computers and we have Netflix and we have this, people are more bored than they've ever been in their entire lives, I think, compounded by COVID.
Correct.
And
I was gonna say,
like, people are watching a bunch of garbage on Netflix all the time. Like the amount of things that I've watched where I wouldn't have ever given it the time of day in a pre-Netflix world is astounding.
I know.
So then this gem comes along that has Leo, and it has this guy, and it has that person, and it has this, and it's like, of course, like everybody is going to flock to that. So I think it's like, not only are we seeing a movie like Don't Look Up perform unbelievably on a service like this. You're seeing a heap of garbage like Emily in Paris crush on this service, right? And it's because people have right there, it's on their fingertips. Now, one thing I do want to say though, is this whole conversation that we've had has had a bit of a lens on it of there's a problem. There's a problem. People aren't going to the movies. What are we going to do about it? There's also a huge benefit to the fact that just the other day I watched The Lost Daughter. It's not a movie I would have gone to have seen.
But that's what I'm saying. It's not. You could look at it through that lens, but you could also look at it through the one that you're talking about, where it's like it's not a problem. More people are seeing.
I would love to sit Ridley Scott down and be like, man, like your movie, had it been on Netflix with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon and Adam Driver,
would have done huge numbers.
It would have destroyed. It would have destroyed. So I think it's the philosophical shift has happened. There are movies that I think are worth people's time, worth their money, worth the movie going experience. You got to see it in IMAX. You got to hear the surround sound. And then there's others that are quieter films that are less. And you know, I know someone like you in particular, Brad, like really appreciates the way that a movie's shot or the sound mixing or whatever. And these are things that we pick up on, but the average moviegoer doesn't give a shit or doesn't notice. So that's not going to, so for West Side Story, you're right. That movie looks beautiful, but to the average person, they don't care. They just want to know that the two people fall in love. Like,
I highlighted Top Gun Maverick earlier and said, they'll push that movie forever because you have to, I need to see some in the air dogfighting. I need to be in the cockpit with Maverick in an IMAX
we need to
theater.
hear Kenny Loggins
with a
full blast.
Yeah.
But what is the difference? So here, two movies for you. Straight to at-home release on HBO Max. Dune. We reviewed it on this podcast. That's a movie where when I was watching it at home, I was going, this would have been good in that, like, this is a movie meant to see in the theater.
It was like perfect for the theater. It was excellent in the theater.
Without question. What is the difference between me watching House of Gucci in the theater and watching it in my comfortable basement on my big TV? There is no difference.
Right. No, you're right.
My experience is not changing at all. So I'm thinking the philosophical shift needs to happen in that, like I said, the blockbuster movie in the theater is very much alive and well.
Yes.
And I think these directors and these studios need to start realizing, like, hey, if I'm going to make a movie that isn't really special effects heavy, doesn't really require the theater experience, more people are going to watch it if I put it on a Netflix, on an HBO Max, on an Amazon Prime, on, like, full stop. Like, Red Notice has the streaming record currently on Netflix. Don't look up, it's chasing it, but Red Notice currently has it.
Yep.
That's Dwayne Johnson. So I do think it would have done okay in the theater. But still, like, most people wouldn't have gone to the theater to see that. They would have watched it at home.
I think it's interesting to make note of what's been going on, even within just like how films are being made and the budgets for film, because you look at something like Red Notice with Dwayne Johnson and Ryan
Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds. I was gonna say Ryan Gosling, wrong Canadian Ryan.
Yeah.
And Gal Gadot. And it's like, you think about, without fully looking it up, we already know that I'm sure half of the budget of that movie was probably just to pay them. Correct? I would assume.
I would assume.
Because yes, I'm sure there was a fair amount of stunt work and special effects and you know, things like that. The budget for that movie would have been inflated to a point where, you know, usually I wouldn't have thought something like that could survive on like a streaming platform, because at this point, in a lot of cases for these streaming services, they're trying to pull their money from new subscribers. That's really where they're getting most of their money. But at this point, I'm kind of like, who doesn't already have a Netflix account / know somebody that has one and you're just using their code or login. And so my question also then becomes, how is a streaming service like Netflix, for instance, the big dog right now, how are they affording this? How are they affording to put a movie on a streaming platform where they're pouring the money in? And when in turn, if this was back in the day or look at it even just now, I guess, as far as like, if I was to drop this in the theater, people go like, oh, it didn't blow the doors off. But it's like, yeah, but they probably still made X amount of money. It was probably either double what they spent or triple what they spent, quadruple, whatever. And so I look at this now and I start going, how is Netflix doing this? Is it just kind of like, are there side projects as far as like, they're getting sponsors?
I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg with Netflix. So the production budget for Red Notice on Netflix, the production budget for Red Notice was $200 million. Netflix reported a Q3 earnings revenue of $7.5 billion, $1.4 billion in profit.
Yeah, that'll do it.
So like, and I think we're just getting started with Netflix here. Like, this is a whole other podcast for a whole other time, but like, I think we're just, when you see things like the numbers, like a Red Notice does, and like a Don't Look Up does, and some of their original content TV shows, the numbers those do, like, I think we're just getting started with Netflix. It amazes me that, in a day and age where everybody and their mother has a streaming service, Netflix is still the king daddy topper of the.
You want to talk about a podcast for another time. They're the only ones who have the UI figured out. Like, they're the only, every other streaming service drives me bananas.
Well, they're essentially just riding old projects that they've already had, and now they just got it back from Netflix and they're putting it on their own streaming service in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I mean, like the user experience of like, watch next episode, or like jump to the thing, or here's you continue watching, or whatever. Like, they've also just got that figured out better than the rest of them too. So like, I mean, that's me going on a bit of a side tangent there, but like
technical.
But it all ties back to what we said. It's like convenience, right? Like actually, it's so funny because, Rob, you were listing a couple of streaming services there, and I'm going, like, if I wasn't paying for, say, Disney Plus, and House of Gucci went up on Disney Plus, I'm not getting Disney Plus for House of Gucci. No. So it's I think and maybe this will be a good point to put a pin in the conversation around Netflix, but like, I think Netflix right now is putting in what they're getting out more than any of the other streaming services. Like, they are pumping out content.
Well, I'll say this, not to step on us putting a pin in that, but I will just finish it by saying what's also full circle about this is Netflix has pretty much all but said they don't want to be the reason why movie theaters disappear.
But they won't be the reason why.
Well, they won't be, but what I thought was interesting, if you even just think back to, I believe it was either 2018 or 2019, whatever year it was that The Irishman came out with De Niro, Scorsese directed. They cut a deal essentially upon Scorsese's like request of saying like, essentially, I'm not going to do it unless we do it this way. And there was some negotiating. They negotiated the fact that it was going to be a short run at the theater, like we've talked about before on this podcast, as far as like, maybe that's the formula, whatever. But it was Netflix and Scorsese that said, we will do a short run of this in the theater and allow people to have that theater experience if they want to see it in the theater. But after that, it's going straight to Netflix, baby. And a lot of people did see it in theater, and they recouped a lot of money just from
maybe that's a way you build the hype. Then you say you've got this finite window that you can get a theater experience. But again, just to put a bow on it, because we've overstayed our welcome this week. I do see a world in which movie theaters become solely about the blockbuster experience. You don't need 12 cinemas. You need 6, and make them bigger with bigger screens, bigger audiences. to have more of that concert feel for Avengers.
Comfier chairs.
To have so you can go and watch Avengers Secret Wars, which the Russo brothers are in talks to come back and direct. To go and do that. And so it'll be interesting to see where this goes. But yeah, this is a conversation that continues to fascinate me.
Me as well.
You can't beat convenience, baby. You just can't do it.
And
I think it's going to do it for this week, guys. On that note, I'm going to go sit on my couch and watch something.
I was going to say I'm probably doing that right now.
Yep, pretty much.
Thanks, Netflix.
Thanks, everybody, for checking us out this week. If you like what you see, hit that like and subscribe button below. Also, head on over to our Instagram. That link will be below as well. Spread the word. Tell your friends. We really appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
Bye.